The Reader Center is one way we in the newsroom are trying to connect with you, by highlighting your perspectives and experiences and offering insight into how we work. With President Trump promising to sign a tax bill that offers what is being called the most comprehensive tax reform in a generation, readers had lots of questions to ask the Your Money columnist, Ron Lieber, on Wednesday during his Facebook Live chat. More than 500 readers left comments during the Facebook Live event or submitted questions to our website, asking about issues including the bill's effects on small businesses, its effects on itemized deductions, and what it will mean now to live on a fixed income. You can watch all of Ron's session here. Below are his answers to 6 of the 10 questions he addressed, condensed, and edited for clarity. Did the bill change anything about how capital gains are taxed? Anne-Marie Hislop, from Chickagoth, answer to that question is no, for the most part. Not only do capital gains taxes not change at all, but they're actually going to be based on the old brackets. There is one twist here, though. Many of you out there may be familiar with 529 college savings plans. The way those work is that you put money in and then you take money out, and if you use it for higher education expenses you do not have to pay the capital gains taxes on growth of that money over time. So the new twist is this: you will now be able to take money out of 529 accounts and use them for private school, K-12 private school, in addition to college, again without having to pay any capital gains taxes on that money. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Why is the corporate tax cut deemed to be permanent? Couldn't it be lowered by a Democratic-controlled, or as you put it saner, bipartisan Congress, at a later date? PDX Girl in Vancouver, Washington. The answer to that question is yes, but the terminology permanent is meant to distinguish it from what is happening on the individual side. A lot of the tax cuts on the individual side are not in fact permanent, they are scheduled to expire at the end of 2025. That had to be done for budget reasons so that the changes that were made could fall into line with procedural rules requiring the cost of this bill to remain under $1.50 trillion. So the corporate tax cut is in fact permanent, unless and until some other Congress changes it in the future. But the personal tax cuts, those are going to expire in 2025, which of course makes it difficult for people to plan long term. Apparently it was deemed more essential that the corporations are able to make long-term tax plans than the individual. So that is where we are. Thank you, PDX Girl in Vancouver. I've seen lots of commentary about how this will hurt the middle class, the tax bill will. But no mention of those of us in the working class. How will this affect people making less than $35,000 a year? Roxanne Jones. As a columnist, I occasionally sort of make note of the ways in which people define themselves in terms of social class terms. So Roxanne, I don't know how you define working class and how you distinguish that from middle class. There's a lot of people here in New York City in particular who define themselves as middle class, even though they make $150,000 or $200,000 or $250,000 a year. Basically, if they know more than a handful of people who make more money than they do, then they think that they're middle class. And so I don't know quite how to frame this one. But I can tell you this: for people who earn less than the median household income, which is less than $50,000 a year, a fair number of those people, in fact the vast majority, will see a little bit more in their paycheck or take home because of these tax cuts. Not everybody, but I'd say the majority. Probably the vast majority of people will. Now everybody's situation is different. And your situation could change next year, so you'll want to consult a tax professional before you make plans. But here's one thing worth noting: the way in which the government calculates inflation in this particular context has changed, and changed permanently with this bill. That's going to cause some complicated consequences that will eventually lead in 5 or 6 or 7 years to more people seeing whatever savings they got from this tax bill effectively eroding. So for all the people in the lower sort of income categories who will see a gain, who will see savings from this bill, the number of people who actually do when you take inflation into account will change and will lower over time. So that may or may not be you depending on your circumstance. Roxanne, thanks for that question. Will there still be tax deductions for student loan payments? Jasmine, hope the answer to that question is yes. Jasmine, you probably saw a lot of the rumors about the fact that this might go away. I know the House bill was trying to get rid of student loan deductions. There was a huge outcry. If you were involved in some of that outcry or the lobbying around that, congratulations. You won. Student loan deductions stay. Has flexible spending for medical and child care changed? Also commuter benefits? Thanks. Edward added. So what Edward is talking about here is that many employers, large employers in particular, but increasingly smaller ones as well, and also employers in certain states where employers are required to offer this benefit, offer workers the option of having money yanked out of their paychecks and put aside in a separate account before they pay any income taxes on it. It's money that a worker can use to pay for public transportation, to pay for parking, to pay for medical expenses, to pay up to $5,000 in legitimate authorized child care charges. I love those programs. I use every single one of them myself. I encourage all of you to do that too. The House at one point had talked about taking away the child care benefit, so that $5,000 that people had been able to set aside for daycare, or day camp, or even elder daycare, which is what some people use it for, that was going to go away. And there was so much anger, so quickly, that it didn't even make the final House bill, was never in the Senate bill. So Edward, I understand why you might have been worried about that, because that was kind of in the air for a little while. But none of that has changed. So you'll still get to put aside that $5,000 or so for dependent care expenses. Commuter benefit changes were not on the table for the most part. So no changes there vis-a-vis your subway. But for reasons that nobody understands, they went after bicycle commuters on this one. There's a $20 a month bicycle commuting tax benefit that's existed for a little while. That is now gone at a savings of not very much money to the Treasury. Not clear why bicycle commuters were deemed so offensive that needed to be removed, but here we are. No more bike benefits for you, Edward, if that is what you were concerned with, and if so, I apologize. Elizabeth Hunter asks about the status of charitable deductions. She mentions the fact that this can affect both the givers and the receivers. This is true. So let's start here. The standard deduction, i.e., the deduction on your tax returns that you can take without having to itemize and write down all the little expenses that you had all year, that's gone up significantly. It's gone up to $12,000 for individuals, $24,000 for couples, and many people who used to itemize, including all of their charitable deductions, will no longer need to, and they'll get perhaps a bigger tax benefit than they got before. The concern among non-profits is that this would cause some people not to give as much money anymore, thinking that part of the reason they were giving the money was to get the tax benefits. So we don't know how people will change their charitable behavior here. This is in some ways a great experiment. So if you are kind of right on the line between getting a deduction or not getting a deduction, itemizing or not itemizing, one thing you might do is bunch up your charitable deductions in 1 year, right? So to kind of put yourself over the top. So you can still itemize your deductions, including the charitable deductions, and then get that juicy tax benefit from doing so. So maybe you might give all of your donations in 1 year and then wait a couple of years, save some money and in your sort of charity savings account on the side, and then do some big boffo charitable contributions in 1 year. Or, if you want to smooth out your giving so that your favorite causes get money each and every year, or if you can't make up your mind before December 31st about who you want to give to, you can set up something called a donor-advised fund. Fidelity and Vanguard set these up. They're basically like charitable gift funds. You put the money in there. You get the deduction right away, and then you can sort of parcel the money out from those accounts to the charities and the non-profits over however much time you want. There are a few fees associated with it, but it's probably worth it if you want to sort of bunch up your donations in this way. You can do that until December 31st as long as you are willing to wire the money into the accounts that quickly.